everyone, welcome back to the Aspiring Medics. Chances are if you're watching this video you've either already received your medical school interview invitation, which if you have, congratulations, or you're willing to get a head start on your interview prep, which is equally as brilliant. I'm Katie, a fourth year medical student and one of the presenters here at the Aspiring Medics, and today, due to popular demand, we're going to be going over how to structure your interview prep all the way from October to the night before your interview to hopefully encourage you to develop consistent interview habits to feel confident going into your interview and manage to smash it and get your medical school spot. Let's get started. October is the month about laying the foundations down and understanding what you're preparing for in your interview. The first step that I would recommend is researching more about your medical school and which one that you've applied for. Each medical school do use different interview platforms, so it's really important to understand what style your medical school are using. For example, the panel-based interview can be used in universities like Oxford, Cambridge, Swansea, Glasgow, so it's really important to bear those in mind. Whereas the MMI interview is generically more common and more popularly used by medical schools, so that tends to be your more typical style of interview. So it's really important to understand those two formats depending on what medical schools that you've applied for. Secondly, it's really important to reflect more on your personal statement and reflect on all the things that you've written down, including your motivation, your experiences, and your insight, because there can be MMI interview stations or panel interviews where they go through your personal statement with a fine-tooth comb, so it's really important to know about what you've written about and be able to reflect on that in a public setting. It's also really important to reflect on how the interviews are structured and what stations might come up. For example, NHS hot topic stations can come up, ethical role-playing situations, understanding like a personal statement and reflection stations. There can be teamwork and communication. So understanding all of those hot topics can come up, and structuring when to revise for each of those core concepts, because they can be quite different, is really important. The October time is also a good opportunity to start your light practice, so that might involve taking time out to do 2 or 3 questions a week with preparation with your parents, or something I would definitely recommend, finding other aspiring medical students and maybe setting up like a practicing station where you can all bounce ideas off of each other, because they're going through the same interview preparation process, so it's really important to kind of come together and be able to reflect on that and practice together. Another top tip I would recommend, for my interviews I made a folder about each of the common interview stations and ensured that my revision was consistent across all the different stations, so I felt prepared for anything they could throw at me going into the interview. Furthermore, here at the Aspiring Medics, we've also developed a free university guidebook which goes through all of the different medical schools and what interview structure that they use. So you can find that on our website, so feel free to check that out because it could be really useful to understand what interview style your university is using. So come November time, it's all about developing those core skills further and also doing further research about the skills that you need to develop and those ethical frameworks and how you can address every single question that could come up in your interviews. So firstly, it's really important to do more research about those ethical frameworks, for example, Beauchamp and Childress' 4 pillars of medical ethics, which can really help you answer those ethical-based questions or role-play scenarios you might get in your interviews. So that's all about autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. For example, if I was confronted with a situation where a patient was refusing medication, I'd want to ensure that I was discussing autonomy and respecting the patient's wishes, but also mentioning about beneficence and non-maleficence, which is like doing no harm and acting in the best interests of the patient and trying to balance those two components. It's also really important to start ramping up your revision slightly, potentially organising weekly MMI revision sessions with your friends or bi-weekly sessions with your parents, and just going through more of those questions so you can feel prepared as possible and kind of be able to practice how you're answering questions in your mind and out loud with your family and friends. Another good tip would also be to record yourself when you're answering questions. Then you can watch it back and take note on your clarity, your tone, and the way that you're coming across. That can be really helpful because if you're not coming across in the way that you want to for your interviews, then it can be really helpful to try and refine your technique before the interview day comes. It can also be useful to get families' feedback on those videos as well to see if they notice any changes, and you can reflect on your weaknesses and build on that for your future interview. In November, it's also a good time to gain more insight into the frameworks available to you when trying to structure your answer. One of those is STAR, which is really effective for reflecting on your personal experiences and your motivations for medicine. So that's situation, task, action, and reflection. So that's a really good framework you can use to try and structure your answers. I think one last pro tip would be don't try and memorize your answers, but try and aim for creating a structured answer. Interviewers they're able to tell when someone's memorized an answer, and it comes across much more genuine if you have some structure in your answer, but you haven't gone away and just memorized a whole thing that you've rehearsed so many times. It comes across as more genuine and really shows your skills of being able to think on your feet, which are crucial skills for a future doctor. If you want more of that interactive practice, at the Aspiring Medics we've developed an AI tutor to help you go through different revision questions. They offer real-time feedback, which can be really helpful for your interview prep. December is the month of practice and reflection, and the month of applying all the skills that you've been learning in October and November and refining those skills further for December, when the interview period is much more rapidly approaching. Some students may even have their interviews scheduled in December, so it's really important that you're integrating more mocks into your revision and being able to expand on the topics that you've been researching. So the first thing that I'd recommend is integrating more of those full mocks into your revision, potentially doing 2 to 3 mocks per week with family or with friends. It's really important to be able to reflect on each mock you've done as well, reflecting on what went well, your strong points, reflecting on what you could do differently and your weaknesses to improve for next time. And then further to that, what changes you can make for next time to ensure that you're hitting all the points and you're getting the best interview practice as you possibly can. At this point, I'd also recommend keeping up on those NHS current affairs. It's really important to understand what's going on in the NHS because these are topics that can come up in your interview. So being able to read an article every couple of days, or even ideally every day. If you're on a morning bus or you have some free time, just scanning through BBC for any of the health updates can be really helpful in ensuring that you feel well prepared for going into your interview where you may be presented with an NHS hot topic. At this point, a best tip would be to create a sort of cheat sheet with some NHS hot topics or ethical buzzwords which can help to aid your preparation. We also have a blog here at the Aspiring Medics where we talk about real student experiences, talk more about the ethical hot topics, and don't forget our videos on our YouTube channel as well where we're going over questions related to NHS hot topics, ethical decision making, and going through all of the interview stations and how you can approach them and how to structure your answers as well, including your own revision and your work experience. So now it's 2 weeks before your interview, and this is the time for your consolidation and perfection of your technique. So this often involves reviewing every NHS interview topic more than once. For example, going through the ethical decision-making questions, your personal motivation questions, and your teamwork and communication sessions. Ensuring that you're going over each topic more than once is ideal. It's also important to start timing your mock interview questions and understanding that you've only got a limited time for those answers in the final interview to ensure that you're expressing all the points that you want to in the given time and being able to practice in that timed setting. Our AI tutor also has a timed question feature, so that might be useful to supplement your own revision. It can also be good to develop small cue cards that you can look at, for example, NHS hot topics, personal reflections and your personal statement review, and also about the ethical decision-making questions. So having those on flashcards or short cue cards can be helpful for your own revision. It's also a pro tip I would suggest would be to record all of the mock interviews that you're having, including any interviews that you organise with a teacher, someone who's a bit more unfamiliar, can be really helpful to ensure that you're coming across coherently and clearly, and that you are coming across and being able to express yourself consistently over all the practice that you've been doing, so that in your interview day it comes across as clearly as possible. It's also really important to simulate those interview conditions, for example, dressing in smart attire, sitting upright, and ensuring that you've got good eye contact and developing those non-verbal body language skills before the interview date. Now it's the night before, and this is all about being calm and confident and taking your time out for self-care. On the night before, you might want to do one final mock interview prep, ideally with someone who is not as close to you. It could be an acquaintance or a teacher, to have that kind of professional setup which could be useful for your interview. You also want to make sure that you're planning your outfits and your routine for the next day, just to eliminate all sources of stress on the day of the interview. Take time out to relax, watch a movie, maybe lightly review your notes but nothing too heavy. Just take that time to visualize your success and be able to take that time for self-care, because it can be very stressful in the lead up to your interview. You also want to make sure that you're planning your routes well ahead of time. For example, if you need to take any public transport, ensuring that you're leaving with lots of time to get to your interview. Equally, if you're having an online interview, it's really important to check your router setup, check your internet connection, and making sure you can access all the links. Just having those checks the night before can be really helpful. So lastly, take a moment to reflect. Take a moment to remember how much work you've put in, all of the different practice with your friends and family, all of the resources that you've researched. You're ready for this interview and you're at a point where you are at your most prepared. So just reflect on that and overcome the mental block, because it can be very stressful in the run up to the interview, but you've got this and you've put in all the work. So having that positive mindset can really change the outlook for your interview and ensuring that you're performing at your best. And that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really do hope you found it useful, where we had the timeline all the way from October to the day before your interview. If you did like the video, be sure to subscribe and check out our next videos, which we're going to be going through all the different types of interview questions and how you can structure your answers. Be sure to drop us any comments if you have any questions about how to structure your interview, or if you have any insight if you've already done an interview before. And remember guys, you've got this, don't stress, and we really hope that you become the future doctors.